Shalom. Good morning to you all, and welcome to another episode of Walking in the Light, discovering the secret wisdom encoded within Torah's timeless stories. Welcome, one and all. Let me know that you're listening. Leave your name and your location, if you would, and we'll have a communication, have a conversation before the day's over, we hope. So let me talk to you about the section we're in the Torah. The Torah is divided into 54 subdivisions, and we're in the 14th of those 54 subdivisions. This is the Torah portion called Va'era, and I appeared, and I manifested myself, and I made myself seen. That's what the verse, the language means, Va'era. And it's the 14th subdivision of Torah begins with Exodus chapter 6, verse 2, and continues through Exodus 9, verse 35. So we're going to get into the heart and the meat of the greatest redemption story ever told. We're going to begin, we've had the prologue last week in the parsha known as Shemot, the 1:1 of Exodus through 6:1 of Exodus. We had a prologue to this great redemption story that is going to be told around campfires and around tables for many generations, actually until the time of the redemption, the great redemption that will come in the future. So this story is the greatest redemption story ever told, and we're just about to get into it. Grab a hold of something to drink, eat, and let's move into the story. The story is about to kick off with a flare this week. Va'era is going to describe for us, and the story will be told of 11 separate God encounters, situations where the creator of the universe desires and deigns to cross the Rakia barrier, the firmament between the heavens and the earth, and connect the two realms by transcending the Rakia, the infinity veil, that I like to call it, the barrier of infinity. And he breaks through that 11 times in this parsha. He is really wanting us to get to know him. He wants us to see him. He wants to appear to us. He wants us to have a very real, very significant, very substantive relationship with him, not just a system of beliefs about him. So he's going to appear, he's going to speak 11 separate times in these few chapters that we're reading in Parsha Va'era. By way of contrast, so you understand how significant these 11 separate God encounters and episodes of God speak are. In contrast, Shemot, the previous parsha, the prologue parsha, only contained one God encounter, one episode of God speak. Now, albeit it lasted for 2 chapters, chapters 3 and chapters 4 of Exodus, but nevertheless, it was only one encounter, and it only involved one person, namely Moshe. It was the burning bush call. The thorn bush burst into flames, and a voice that had not been heard for generations, since the time of Yaakov, many generations past, burst forth from the flames of the thorn bush and spoke to Moshe, called him as the new character, the new human hero, as it were, of the story that's about to unfold, the greatest redemption story ever told. So this parsha of Va'era is going to have 11 separate God encounters between the Holy One and Moshe. He's going to be speaking indirectly to a lot of other people. Some of the people will include Pharaoh, another set of people that's going to be indirectly affected by these words. And it starts with Aaron and Miriam, and it goes all the way through all the Hebrew slaves. And the third aspect of the indirect, I guess you could say, contact of these God encounters is going to be with the people of Egypt, from the magicians of the Pharaoh's court to the advisors of his council rooms to the average Egyptian on the street. And, if you will, receive it. The 11 separate God encounters will also be speaking directly to you and to me and to our children and our children's children forever. These are recorded in the Torah to give us a portrait of what it's like when God breaks the infinity barrier, crosses the divide of the Rakia, and comes to speak to us on earth and intervene in our affairs. So these 11 separate God encounters are the first thing we should notice about Parsha Va'era that is unique. in having that many God encounters, the 11 separate ones. There are also 7 separate interventions, active interventions of the creator of the universe, changing the, as some people call it, the laws of nature, or the assumptions, the paradigm expectations of creation are going to be altered 7 times. I have a total of 10 for the entire redemption story in this week. What we call these interventions is going to be very telling about how we have received, what we make of this story. Many people call these plagues, the 10 plagues, and this week we talk about 7, the first 7 of those 10 plagues. If you think of what he's doing in these interventions as plagues, then you will think of it as being something ominous and foreboding and angry on his part, and you'll think of it as some sort of a cruelty and judgment and oppression on his part. But that's not what the Bible calls them. There's one reference to the idea of a nakha, a strike, a surgical strike. It's like a very measured, precise surgical strike. That's not a plague. A plague is you've seen in pandemics and epidemics. We understand how broad-based those are. But a surgical strike, a nakha, is something different. And that's not even the way, even that. Nakah is only mentioned a couple of times. The big issue, that what these things are normally called by the Torah itself and by the Hebrew people, is not plagues or nakhaut, plural of nakah. What they are is otot, plural of ot. Ot means a sign, a covenant sign, an evidence of covenant faithfulness, like the circumcision sign. Like the Shabbat is a sign of faithful covenant. So these 7 of the first of the 10 these are all otot. They're all signs. And whenever we talk about them in our conversations, we will not be talking about plagues. We'll be talking about covenant signs, affirmations of the covenant that speak to precise elements that need to be addressed in the world situation and the status quo. And they are beautiful. They are not ominous. So the first 7 of the 10 famous otot will be mentioned, will be discussed and described in this parsha. These are the 7, these are the otot, I should say, through which the Holy One intends to do a lot of things. He's going to birth the great nation of the seed of Abraham that he promised to Abraham, Yaakov, and Isaac. He's going to do that. He's going to bring forth a great nation. He's going to awaken the neshama in the scattered, dispersed, and oppressed seed of Abraham and have them come alive and tune into the heavenlies. And he's going to liberate the seed of Abraham, the sons of the covenant and the daughters of the covenant, and the children of the covenant from the oppression and the negative influence of the raging nation, starting with its premier example, which is Mitzrayim, known in the Western world as Egypt. Now, this is part of a grand plan. The greatest redemption story ever told is part of a grand plan. And the grand plan is for the parallel, all-setting realms of Hashemayim, which the King James Version of English called the heavens, and Haaretz, which the King James Version called the earth. So these 2 parallel realms of the beginning of creation, Genesis 1:1, were Hashemayim and Haaretz, 2 parallel realms that don't necessarily have any contact but are designed, yes they are designed to be synchronized and designed to be interfacing with one another and have the heavenly engage with and align with the earthly and vice versa. But if the parallel realms of Hashemayim and Haaretz, the heavens and the earth, are going to align, and are going to interface, beloved, and are going to harmonize and synchronize, then there needs to be something happening on the earth, because the earth is corrupt. The earth has been polluted. The earth has Ra, evil, Shekat, corruption, Hamas, violence, cruelty, Tumah, uncleanness, profanity, vulgarity, vanity, all these different things that are in the earth. So in order for heaven to harmonize with, interface with, and align with earth, then earth needs to have something happening inside of it that activates that harmonization, that interface, and alignment. What is that? That is the development of a lightning rod people on the earth. A people on the earth who are awakened to and alive with the sounds that resonate from heaven, and can receive and resonate with those sounds and rebroadcast and model on earth the alignment with those signs, those words, those signals, those communications from heaven that heaven is beaming down. We need an interface people, a lightning rod people. The Holy One's plan requires a lightning rod people. Well, that's B'nai Israel. That's the children of Israel, sons and daughters of the covenant, because they're designed to prepare the way on the earth. They are designed to open up a freeway, as it were, or a runway, at least, for the heavenly messages to be beamed down and land upon the earth, have a good landing, and have a place to have a beachhead upon the earth. And this people, this lightning rod people, has to be noticeably different than the rest of the nations, the rest of the peoples of the earth. They must think differently. They must perceive life and have a worldview that's different. They think differently and perceive the world differently. They must speak differently, different vocabulary, different phrasing, different language. The Hebrew language should be the source and basis of everything this people should do, because that's the language of the heavens. So they should think different and speak different, and they should process visual, auditory, and sensory stimuli differently. They should prioritize things differently. They should value things differently and people differently. They should behave differently. This must be the difference that causes a lightning rod people to be noticeable and to be able to receive, resonate, and rebroadcast and model alignment with the signals that are beamed down from heavens. The people of the lightning rod people have to be functionally more like the creatures of the heavens. That means the four living creatures, the 24 elders, the cherubim, the seraphim, all the things and the people and the creatures around the throne, and of course the one who sits on the throne. We must be functionally more like the creatures of the heavens than we are like the creatures of the earth. This is radical stuff. This is what is necessary. And we talked about last week, just briefly, we talked about the overall theme of Torah being like Psalms 1 and 2, juxtaposed against each other. To make this difference, make a lightning rod people different, he has to show this distinction pretty clearly. Psalm 1 says, "Blessed is the man who does not do certain things, walk in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stand in the way of sinners, nor sit in the seat of the scornful." You see, these three things, we must be different from the rest of the nations, the rest of the peoples, the rest of the religions, from the rest of the philosophies, the rest of the ideologies. We must not walk in the counsel of the ungodly. If the people are, if the messengers are ungodly, we must not walk in them. We must not stand in a way. We must not get in the same places, do the same things as the sinners do, those who violate and walk away from the words of the living God, the instruction manual for heaven and earth. We must not sit in the seat of the scornful. We must not be critical and judgmental and sarcastic and vile and profane with regard to the things we see and what we say about them. So why do the nations rage? Psalm 1 says, "Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful. But his delight," this is how we differ, "his delight is in the Torah," the instruction manual, the life instructions of the Holy One. "And in his Torah he meditates." Yes, he engages day and night. He will be like a tree planted by the rivers. You see how this lightning rod people is developing. He will be like a tree planted by the rivers of living water, which brings forth its fruit in its season. Its leaf also shall not wither, but whatsoever he does will prosper. That's the lightning rod people the Holy One's calling forth, and he's calling them forth now out of Egypt, and he's calling forth them now as you're watching this video and listening to the sound of my voice, you are receiving that call to come out, to come away, to be like these lightning rod people. Everything it does shall prosper. Now, the next part of that psalm, it says, "The wicked are not so." The wicked, there's another group of people out there, the ones who stray away from the ways of the Holy One, who are stray away from the signals that are being broadcast and beamed down from the heavens. The wicked are not so, but are like the chaff which the wind drives away. Therefore they will not stand in the judgment, nor assemble with the righteous. Now the eye of the Holy One is upon the righteous, but upon the way of the wicked shall perish from the earth. Now that's Psalm 1. Psalm 2 takes the second part further. It says, why do the nations rage? Okay, now we're seeing that a contrary or a parallel to, offsetting the people of the lightning rod people of the Holy One, there's this other group of people, the nations that rage. Why do the nations rage? Why do the peoples imagine a vain thing? The answer, the kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Holy One and against his anointed, saying, let us break their bonds in pieces. Let us break the bonds of these lightning rod people, these covenant people, in pieces and cast away their cords from us. This is the message of the leaders and the rulers of the nations that rage. He who sits in the heavens, though, will laugh. The Holy One will hold them in derision. He will speak to them in warning tones, and he will distress them in his deep displeasure. He will say, I've set my king on my holy hill of Zion, and I will declare the decree. The Holy One has said to me, you are my son. This will come back, or you actually should have seen that phraseology in Parsha Shemot, the prologue Parsha, when the Holy One refers to Bnei Israel as his son. And he tells Pharaoh that because you have done what you will do to my son, I will do what I will do to your son. And son meaning Israel. You are my son. Today I have begotten you. He continues, ask of me, and I will give you the nations for your inheritance. Do you understand that the nations are our inheritance? That means they're our stewards. We are put in stewardship of them. We have a responsibility to serve them, a responsibility to manage them, a responsibility to bring out the best in them, not to oppress them the way they would like to oppress us, and as Pharaoh in Egypt has done to Bnei Israel. Goes on, you will discipline them, keep them in discipline with a rod of iron. You will dash them to pieces. You will break them apart from their gatherings like a potter's vessel. And now, therefore, the voice of the Holy One speaks. Be wise, O kings. Be instructed, you judges of the earth. Serve the Holy One with reverent fear. This is what the lightning rod people do. Serve the Holy One with reverent fear and rejoice with trembling, as do the lightning rod people. Kiss the Son, lest he be displeased and you perish along the way. When his wrath, his displeasure is kindled, even just a little. And the second psalm concludes by saying, Ashrei, going straight in the right direction, therefore joyful, happy, and fulfilled. Ashrei are all those who flee to and seek refuge in and trust in him, being the Holy One and his Son. The lightning rod people are coming forth. But there has to be a great distinction between the people of the covenant, the people who are designed to be the runway of heaven coming to earth. There must be a distinction between us and the rest of other peoples. So in chapter 8 of Exodus, in this week's Parsha, this is explained by the Holy One. The Holy One, I'm going to kind of combine a couple of verses, but I believe it's 19 and then 20 and 22. No, it's chapters 22 and, excuse me, let me try again. It's Exodus 8, verses 22 and 23. And I'm going to kind of take a few of those phrases and put them together. First of all, he says, English says sever. I will separate, or I will sever. Palah is the Hebrew word, the Hebrew verb, palah. I will palah the land of Goshen. And then he goes a little further in the next verse, says, and I will put a division, a pedut in Hebrew. I will put a pedut between my people and your people. You see this distinction, this difference, this mark is going to be of separation is going to be put in place. And this is part of the whole story of the otot, of the signs, of the covenant of affirmations that the Holy One's going to do these 7 times and these 7 interventions. If you understand this idea of the palah, the severance or the separating out, and the pedut, which is the making a functional division, functional separation between the Holy One's people and the peoples of the raging nations, then you understand this is an essential part of the Holy One's creative plan, the design for creation, which he always, in the opening chapter of the Torah, Genesis 1, set up the Elohim signature. He would make one thing and he would separate it out from another thing, and he would offset the two, counterbalance the two, allow them to fine-tune and synergize with each other. The heavens and the earth were the first example. Light and darkness were the next example. The dry land and the wet and the waters of the seas, that was another example. The plants of the earth and the animals of the earth were another example. The stars and the celestial bodies in the heavens versus the sun is another example, and on and on and on. The Shabbat versus the 7 days is another of these separations, these Elohim signature counterbalances, offsets. The Shabbat, the 7th day, is to offset and counterbalance and fine-tune and synergize with the 6 days. So what is a pedut? If we're going to talk about the difference, pedut is from the word pada, which means to loosen, to unbind. The verb root of the Hebrew is to loosen, to unbind. It's like you have something tied together and you want to separate them, so you pull loose the binding, begin to remove the first one from the second one, part one from part two. So as to set up them apart and permit the second one a fresh, unburdened perspective. If you have two people walking together, they can only see through the same eyes. But if you separate them and give them a little space between them, they begin to look at things from different perspectives, and they have different ways of seeing things. This is a pedut to give us a different perspective, to set us a little bit free, to break us free physically from the geographical location of the raging nations and the peoples of the raging nations. The second verb is pala. As we said, it is to be distinct, to make distinct in manner and lifestyle, not just to have physical separation and perspective differential, but to have a difference in lifestyle, a difference in approach, a difference in words, vocabulary, a difference in reaction, a difference in behavior, a difference in look, a difference in attitude. These are the things, difference in impact. That's the pala. So we're supposed to be distinguished, different from the peoples of the raging nations, so that we can be lightning rod people, but with both a pedut, being a physical separation, never being too close, too tightly intertwined with their ways, and secondly, pala, have a wholly different view of life, viewpoint, manner of life, approach to life, impact upon the world, transcend the norm that is set by the raging nations. Or any individual one of the raging nations like Egypt or America or China or Russia or in some country in the Middle East or in Africa. We're not to follow those patterns, those cultural ways. We have to have a distinction if we're going to be the lightning rod people that heavens can use to interface with and bring messages from heavens to earth. Now that we've had that basic discussion of what's going to happen over the next few chapters of Torah as we get into this greatest redemption story ever told, I'm going to warn you, it's time to buckle up, because it is great adventure time. The Holy One is going to appear and reveal himself so powerfully in these 11 encounters and these 7 interventions that men of all nations and all tongues and all tribes will begin to know him, yada in Hebrew, to experientially understand him by virtue of seeing what he does, how he does it, and who he is, as opposed to just having information about him or reading about him or having a belief system about him. You're going to see people that actually have known him, and that's where we're going now. The people of Bnei Israel, the covenant people, the lightning rod people, are supposed to know him in a certain way. And the people of the nations are supposed to also know him in a slightly different way, but one that hopefully will not drive them away from him, but drive them to him. The Holy One is going to do a series of things that will cause both humankind in general and the seed of Abraham in particular to begin to see the Holy One, see him in a whole new light, through a whole new lens, according to a whole new paradigm, which once seen, once you see it, once you see who he really is, once you see what he really does, once you see what he's really up to, you can't ever unsee it. Or once you have seen what the Creator of the universe is about to show you, and it's going to start with the 7 interventions, the Otot of Parsha Va'era, and the 11 God encounters and the God Speak episodes of Parsha Va'era. It's going to start there, but once you've seen what the Creator of the universe is about to show you, you will never be able to unsee it. It's that powerful. It's that life-changing. It's that world-changing. And once you are in love with him by virtue of seeing what he can do, who he is, what his goodness is, and what his plan is, you'll never be able to unsee it. You will be ruined forever to the things of the world and the raging nations. This is the Parsha of the Great Reveal. Now we're going to see this Parsha mold into next Parsha, Parsha Bo, but we're not there yet. So this Parsha with the 7 interventions and the 11 God-speaking episodes, this is the great reveal of who the Holy One is and what he can do and what he will do to redeem and restore humanity and bring back creation as an ecosystem to its original intended state of beauty and fruitfulness and shalom and harmonious interaction like Eden. Now he's also going to tell us the great reveal of what he can do to your heart, how he can change your heart. And you have to choose whether that change is to soften your heart and awaken your heart, or whether you will choose instead to harden your heart and let what he does harden your heart even more. It will change your heart, what you see in these parshas, in this parsha particularly, and what it will change your soul, change your mind. It will change your will. It will change your emotion. It will change both your neshama and your nefesh. And in the course of it all, it will change what you do in your flesh and the members of your body. It will redefine who you are. It will redefine why you're here. So let's sing our call to worship and get started in more detail. Let the Hebrew words and phrases flow from my tongue into your heart. Let heaven touch earth as we sing. Baruch Adonai Hamvorak. Baruch Adonai Hamvorak Leolam Vayet. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Bacharvanu Mikol Ha'amin V'natan Lanu Et Toratu. Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah. Amen. Amen. And now may you open our eyes, O Holy One, that we may see wondrous things in your Torah, because we are just strangers in this earth. So do not hide your instructions, your commandments from us. And now gather round, children of the Most High, because it's story time again. We're looking for the secret wisdom encoded within Torah's timeless stories. Now, last week, the great storyteller introduced us to the people of a more excellent way, the great nation from Abraham's seed, the chosen people, Bnei Israel. We have different names for them. The Holy One described them, though, as his people. He called them my people. That was our introduction last week. The great storyteller wanted us to be introduced to the people of the more excellent way. This week, we're going to talk about, and the storyteller is going to tell us about what this people's arrival on the world stage means for the nations that rage and for the peoples that imagine vain things. We are being prepared for the trial of the raging nations. Now, at the end of last week's Parsha, at the end of Parsha Shemot, our situation in Egypt, the sons of the covenant's situation in Egypt, seemed to get worse before the prophesied idea of getting it better. It's going to get better. It's going to get much better. We're going to have this great separation of the Pedut variety, where we're physically separated from Egypt. But we're not there yet, and it seems like it's getting worse before it gets better. We have the gather your own straw decree of Pharaoh. And then after Pharaoh ordered us to give get our straw as well as make our regular quota of bricks and refused to let the people go, and even for a few days out in for some wilderness time with the Holy One, and when he refused to do that and got meaner and tougher and put the taskmasters on our backs to carry all these things, it was difficult. And that's how we ended last week. At the end of last week's parsha, it says, Moshe returned to the Holy One and said, Holy One, why have you brought this darkness, this evil, this unpleasant thing upon your people? Why is it that you even sent me? For since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your behalf, And he has done evil to this people, and neither have you delivered. You've not saddled your people at all. You've not brought them out. And the final words of the last week's parsha hint at what's to come this week. Ata tireh, now the Holy One spoke to Moshe in response to his statement. Ata tireh, now you will see what I will do to Pharaoh. For with yad chazakah, with a mighty hand, he will let them go. And with yad chazakah, with a mighty hand, he will drive them out of his land. I am the Holy One. I am Adonai. So we are on notice as we begin our studies this week. We are on notice that the Holy One is about to show us wondrous things, and not just us, but also Egypt and also the world and also all generations of mankind. Through these stories, the Holy One is going to show us wondrous things. And by the way, wondrous things is Pele, or Pelatim in Hebrew. It's the same word we talked about with Pala, meaning to have a different manner, that which is markedly different. That which is not the norm. The Holy One is going to show us things that are not normal, things that are not ordinary, things that cannot be explained by logic and reason and human intellect in its fallen state. The Holy One is going to show us some things in this parsha of Vayera, things that will change the status quo in Egypt and in the world beyond recognition, things that will redraw our perspective as they breaks us free from Egypt, not just on the world, and not just our perspective on the world and its ethnicities and its physical locations, but also our perspective on our own individual and collective identities, our own individual and collective purposes, our own individual and collective mission on earth, and our own individual and collective destinies. So the prologue. The Holy One is going to speak to Moshe, continue to speak to Moshe. This is the first time he's done so in Egypt. First time since the burning bush. And he says, here's how it opens. Vayadaber Elohim el Moshe vayomer elav. And the Creator God spoke to Moshe. And he said to him, Ani Adonai, Ani Yotevave, Adonai, Ani the Holy One. Va'era el Avram el Yitzhak ve'el Yaakov be'el Shaddai. I appeared to Avram, to Yitzhak, and to Yaakov. I appeared to them as El Shaddai, the sufficient one, the provider, the everything to them. But let's go back to that first phrase, Va'era, and I appeared. Appeared? The Creator of the universe, the Spirit, the all spiritual being. How did he appear? How does a spirit appear? And I appeared. Really? The words "and I appeared" are both emotionally stirring. It should excite us, but they should also be theologically challenging. How does a spirit appear? How does a spirit manifest? These words mean that the Holy One does not want us to just intellectually acknowledge that he exists, or live off someone else's or some book's testimony of who he is and what kind of things he could do. The Creator appearing means that he wants us to personally know him. He wants us to personally and regularly interact with him. He wants to have a vibrant, ongoing, covenantal relationship with us. He wants to show us otot, signs, affirming his covenant is real and practical and meaningful. And he wants this kind of face-to-face and heart-to-heart and fallen-brained, brilliant mind interaction so badly, because it is so essential to his grand plan for species redemption and ecosystem restoration. He wants this so bad that he is actually willing to step out of eternity into time, to step out of invisibility into our field of vision, to step out of his sovereignty to a place where we can understand him and relate to him, to visit with human beings in real time, just to keep the lines of communication and fellowship between the heavens and the earth, between him and humanity, open and flowing. So this mystery the hidden mysteries, the hidden wisdom of Torah's timeless stories. There's a mystery in this idea of divine appearing. It blows theologians' minds. They can't conceive of how he would appear. It's just surely just a metaphor. No, it's not a metaphor. It's repeated multiple times. He appeared to Avram 3 times. Genesis 12:7, 17:1, 18:1. He appeared to Yitzhak twice. Genesis 26:2 and 24. He appeared to Yaakov twice. Genesis 28:10 and 35:1. Now he's going to appear to Moshe a bunch of times. He's going to appear. For the Holy One, an eternal spirit being, to appear, to be seen, means he had to break through the affinity barrier we've talked about. He had to, in other words, put on some level of substantive form. I know this seems sacrilegious. It's not. It is his words. He appeared, and I appeared. He puts on some level of substantive form. He manifests his presence. Doesn't mean he left being off to being a spirit. He's not required to be in one place and one time in one way. He can do both. He can both be an eternal spirit in spiritual form and take on a physical, substantive form and invade the earth. He can do so, and he can do so to demonstrate his character. He can do so to speak words and perform visible actions that human beings' ears can understand and hear. He can do so in the realm we think of as real time. His appearing is one of the most marvelous, wonderful things in the earth. One of the things that makes us understand how good he is, because he will appear to us. Sometimes he only shows us his fringes. Sometimes he only shows us the aftermath of what he has done. Other times he manifests in ways that we hear his voice. We understand in our spirits he has spoken to us, and we know that voice so well. But back to our Torah study. Back to Parsha Va'era. As you'll recall, in response to Moshe and Aaron's initial report that the Holy One of God was telling Pharaoh to let his people go, send his people forth, Pharaoh responded by asking, Mi Adonai Asher Eshma Becholu. Who is Adonai? Who is this Holy One? Who is the God of the Hebrews? Who is this that I should shema his voice, that I should listen to and resonate with and obey and move in consistency with his voice? Who is he? I don't know him. I don't know this God. Okay, Pharaoh, that's a true statement. You do not know this God, but remember that you will. This is the Parsha of the great reveal. So here's the story. Moshe and Aaron have debuted their prophet and priest to the Most High act that we talked about last week, and it was talked to us specifically in the Horeb discourse at the burning bush. Moshe and Aaron have debuted their prophet and priest act of the Most High before the Hebrew slave population and Pharaoh's royal court. 2 debuts, 2 different gatherings, 2 different acts of the same basic story. How did these go? How did these 2 episodes go? Well, let's just say I have some good news, and I have some bad news. The first opening night, let's talk about that one first. That was performed down by the riverside, the out of doors, and to an audience of slaves. And after a long day of forced labor making bricks, building store cities for Pharaoh, a bunch of oppressed and abused Hebrews were primed and ready to hear something positive and something that inspired hope. Something that was not in that harsh Egyptian tongue, a language for a change, but was in that beautiful Kedusha-infused native language known as Hebrew that their mothers had sung to them in the crib, in the cradle. And so they were anxious to hear this. And in the voices, the sounds of Hebrew rang out from Moshe, well, actually from Aaron, because Aaron was the spokesman. And far too exhausted of body and mind to listen to rebel-rousing or politicking or profane ranting or fear-mongering or race-baiting or violence inciting, the things that the fallen world, the raging nations always do. But far too exhausted of body and numb of mind to listen to such stuff. These Hebrew slaves were moved to tears, moved to excitement, enthusiasm, moved to passion by Aaron's spellbinding retelling of the story of Moshe's burning thorn bush encounter with the creator of the universe that we read about last week. Oh, the slaves had listened intently, their ears perked up, their hearts awakened, and they marveled at how the king of the Shemaim realm, the Hashemayim realm, the heavens, and had given this great Horebian decree. He had said, I had surely seen the oppression of my people who are in Egypt. How do you see unless you appear? He has seen the oppression of the people in Egypt, and I have heard their outcry. He sees, he hears. I've heard the outcry because of their taskmasters. So I know he hears, he sees, he knows the sorrows. I know their sorrows. So he had said to Moshe, come now, therefore, I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may, can you believe it, bring my people, the seed of Israel, forth from Egypt, to pedut them, to bring them, break them out free from them. And he went further and said, I will stretch out my hand. The voice of the Creator being recited through Aaron's mouth in Hebrew language. I will stretch out my hand and I will strike Egypt with all my my wonders that I will do in its midst. And after that, Egypt that is, will send you out. I will give this people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. We will receive favor in the sight of those who enslave us. Yes. And when you go out, you will not go out empty-handed. Every woman will ask of her neighbor, he said, who dwells near her house, articles of silver and articles of gold and fabric and clothing, and you will put them on your sons and you will put them on your daughters. And in this manner, you will plunder the Egyptians. Oh, what news! What good news! Yes, this is part of the redemption story, but we haven't seen it happen yet. We just heard the promise, but it was enough. The slaves stared on in wonder. The Hebrews gave awe and reverence, and they bowed, and they prayed, and they cried to the Holy One, and they worshipped. And they saw the signs the Holy One had authorized Moshe and Aaron to demonstrate. The staff morphing into a serpent, and the hand of Moshe reaching inside of his garment, coming back, infected with Zara'at, and reaching in again and being cleansed. Oh, but you need to understand as we get into Parsha Vayera that it was not only the human beings of the Hebrew nation that heard and witnessed what was said and done that night of that opening act of Moshe and Aaron. Gathered around the Hebrews silently was a much larger ecosystem audience that's going to be deeply involved in this week's story in Parsha Vayera. That larger ecosystem audience was a group of witnesses that included all the H2O molecules of the Nile watershed. All the waters of the Nile were present. We were right beside the Nile in the slime pits at the slave camp when all these things were spoken. And the words of Hebrew that came forth were like the light B words. Yahi or the initial Genesis 1:3 declaration. The Hebrew words came out, and while human beings heard them and were amazed, so were to the H2O molecules of the Nile. And we will see how that is going to be implemented and how the waters of the Nile, the H2O molecules of the Nile are going to be transformed because of what they heard that night and what's going to happen in the future, how they're activated. No, that wasn't just the only witness. The other witnesses was the darkness-loving species of the Nile River, the nocturnes, the crocodiles, the frogs, the prowling predators that go in swarms, the crawling insects like lice, the flying insects like flies and locusts, and the parasitic skin lesion producing livestock epidemic causing microorganisms that lived in the Nile that were present, that were hearing, that were removed, touched by this Hebrew download that took place whenever Aaron spoke the Hebrew phrasing that was given to Moshe at the burning bush. All these actors, the darkness-loving species and nocturnes, all heard, and all will be used. All will employ that. All will come and be deployed in their time. Oh, that's not all. The winds in the area, the air currents above in the strata, and the molecules of H2O in each strata of Egyptian airspace heard as well, and we're going to see them activate as well. As well, all the celestial luminaries that shone in the sky over the Egyptian overwatch canopy also heard, and we'll see them in proper time whenever they're activated by virtue of what they've heard. We will see what happens whenever the luminaries cease to glow for a period of time. Oh, we're going to see also other witnesses, the assigned legions of the Holy One's angelic host, angels, the angels of life and the angels of death. They all were there. Now, the first show of Aaron and Moshe concluded, and all those attendants in attendance, human and otherwise, trembled at the words Aaron spoke. And all recognized the source, and all respected the authority of the signs, and all are now ready to be deployed. All surrendered in that moment, there by the river at least, to deploy whatever and whenever they were sent, wherever and whenever they were sent, and play whatever role they were assigned to make the great redemption story that the Holy One had planned come to life in real time, to come to life in actual space of earth, and to do so on their literal watch. But then came, of course, in part of the story last week, the second audition. The first audition was to the Hebrews by the River Nile. This other audition is in Pharaoh's palace in the great rotunda of his courts. This time the audience was all Egyptian, not Hebrew. This time the language spoken was Egyptian, not Hebrew. This time at the throne, on the throne sat Pharaoh. Then around him sat his highest level counselors and advisors, and then the master magicians of Egypt's occult religion gathered around, and great throngs of Egyptian sycophants and soldiers and courtiers and minions all gathered around. This was the audience, the second debut of Moshe and Aaron's act of prophet and priest. This time the atmosphere was full of pomp and circumstance and arrogance and ethnic pride. This time the lines were delivered in the stark, stuffy, stifling Egyptian language, not flowing, soaring, inspiring Hebrew from heaven. So at that time when Aaron and Moshe's names were called, they followed the rules of the court. They spoke in the language of the court, and they acted respectfully, and they showed appropriate deference to their host, as good diplomats are expected to do. They neither accused nor threatened, nor demanded anything from Pharaoh in that encounter. They sought favor, not confrontation. They politely asked Pharaoh for a little cultural diplomatic courtesy. That's all they did. A few days off for the Hebrew part of his vast slave population at least. And they explained that the God of the Hebrews had visited them and was calling them to a week or so of wilderness time alone with him, 3 days into the wilderness. So that's all they did. No signs, no wonders. No muss, no fuss. No rebellion, no insurrection, no arrogance, no blood, no foul. Just words. And Pharaoh was not impressed. Pharaoh responded to Moshe and Aaron's request by saying that he did not yada, he did not know the Holy One. No. And he was definitely not going to let the Hebrews go. And he wasn't through. It got way worse, as we've discussed. In addition to saying he didn't know the Holy One, he went forward and said, now you will gather your own straw as well as the slime that you make the bricks with. So Parsha Va'era begins with the Creator now trying to comfort and console and explain himself to Moshe, who is a bit disillusioned by this whole story. He thinks he's failed because Pharaoh has not responded to his request. Parsha Va'era begins with the Creator speaking audible words to Moshe. He's dazed and confused and depressed, and the Holy One comes to visit him. How beautiful that is. Do you realize how wonderful it is that the Holy One will come to visit us in our times of trial? What the Creator does is reveal himself to Moshe again, fresh and anew, and to reveal to him his redemptive plan in marvelous new ways, at new dimensions that no man has ever seen before, and Moshe had never imagined before. He did not change the covenant, he merely advanced it with specifics. So there's an upgrade in the works, an upgrade to the covenant in the works, an upgrade to the knowledge of the Holy One by Moshe and by Bnei Israel and by those who are the lightning rod people. Are you ready, beloved, for the upgrade? Are you ready for a paradigm shift about who the Holy One is and who we are? Are you ready for the next phase of God-man interactions and collaborating? And the next phase of the grand plan of redemption for mankind and restoration of creation? Are you ready? Before this week is over, before the discussions we have about Parsha Va'era are over, the most powerful nation on earth and its new Pharaoh and its citizens and its slaves will know beyond a shadow of doubt that the Holy One is in their midst. Through wave after wave of supernatural phenomenon, Egypt and we who read and study will become aware. We will come to realize that this mysterious, hostile, seemingly force has suddenly appeared in Egypt's midst and has every intention of dismantling the Egyptian economy, humiliating Egypt's leaders, discrediting Egypt's religion, and unraveling the very fabric of Egyptian society in order to pull us out, to pull the lightning rod people, the offset, the Pedut people out of Egypt and prepare us to function as he's designed to. And it will become clear before the week is over, before Parsha Va'era's language closes, that there's nothing in this world and no one in this world can stop what the Holy One is doing. And more than that, we will learn that only a fool would even want to. Let's go on and read just a moment in Hebrew, the opening phrases. After the reference to the fact that the Holy One visits Moshe, he says, Va'era el Avram el Yitzhak. I appeared to Avram, to Yitzhak, ve'el Yaakov, be'el Shaddai. And to Yaakov I appeared as El Shaddai. Ushmi Adonai lo nodati lachem. And they did not know me in my essence as Adonai, as the Holy One, as Yod He Vav He. V'gam hakimoti et briti etam. So I also cut a covenant with them, a brit with them. Latet lachem et aretz Canaan. And I entrusted to them the land of Canaan in stewardship. And that was the basis of my covenant. Et aretz migurakim asher garu. The land in which they sojourned as foreigners. Lachem emor livnei Israel. Therefore now, say to Bnei Israel, to the sons and daughters of this covenant, Ani, Yod He Vav He, Ani, I am the Holy One. Vehozeti etchem, and I will bring you forth. Metuchat, sivlot Mitzrayim, from the burdens that the Egyptians make you carry. Vehitzalti etchem avotatim, and I will rescue them. I will rescue you from their bondage. Ve'gam ani shamati et na'achat b'nei Israel. And I have heard the outcry of the sons, the daughters of Israel. Asher Mitzrayim abadim otam, which the Egyptians are enslaving now. Va'ezkor et briti. And I have remembered, renewed, and will commemorate my covenant commitment. Ve'ga'alti. And I will redeem you et chem bizroa, with an outstretched arm. Netuya evishtavatim gedolim, and with great judgments. Velakakti, and I will take them. I will take them for my people. Li la'am. V'hayiti, and I will be unto them as God, therefore their God. V'yahidatim ki ani Adonai Elohim, and they will know. They will be known. They will know. They will appreciate. They will understand. They will be conscious of the fact that I am the Holy One, their God. The theme is that they will know. What will we know? We will know that we are His people, that He is our God. We will know that we are here for a purpose and for a reason. We're here for an assignment. We're here for a deployment. We're here to be different than the nations. We're here, though, not to be arrogant toward the nations, not to hate the nations, not to judge the nations, at least not yet. What we're here to do instead is to inspire the nations by being a lightning rod people. We have to connect and have this downdraft and portal open between the heavens and the earth and be receiving downloaded messages from the Creator of the universe, responding to them, radiating with them, resonating with them, and modeling alignment with them to the rest of the world. That is who we are. That is why we're here. That's the message. That is the essence of the message. Veheveti etchem al haaretz, and I will bring you, he says. I'm not just through just by setting you apart. Veheveti etchem al haaretz, and I will bring you into the land. Asher nasati et yadi tet otah, that I swore by lifted hand to give. LaAvram unto Avram, LaYitzhak unto Yitzhak, and Al Ul Yaakov, and unto Yaakov. Venatati otam lachem merosha, and I will give it to them, to you, as a heritage. Ani Yodevave, Ani Adonai, I am the Holy One. This is the message. He's giving us his instructions. He's giving us his marching orders. He's giving us his invitation to participate in this grand plan, to be part of his greatest story ever told, greatest redemption story ever told. He is inviting us, beloved, you and I and our children and our children's children forever, to experience this download, to experience this calling, to experience this collaboration, to experience this knowing and being known experience in life. So there will be basically 13 acts of the play. I'll leave that to you to be able to spend your time in your private discussions and studies, and also your group discussions and studies, to discuss the 13 acts of this great play that prepare us for next week and the conclusion and the actual separation of Israel and Egypt, the actual pedut, the actual palah, the time of not just being physically separated, but actually beginning to become functionally separate and different, that we might be the lightning rod people that might bring the heavens to the earth. Shabbat shalom, beloved. I will see you next week.